COVID-19 travel passes are becoming an international sticking point. Many countries now require proof of vaccination or a negative test for entry. There are also moves to introduce passes for events and indoor activities. South Africa still lags behind in its rollout and may not be able to introduce such a system. Let's discuss this with Checkpoint Software Technologies' Pankaj Bhula. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhula, for your time this morning. So let's start off with the global view and some possible problems. So we've seen fake certificates abounding. There's a lack of global equity in vaccine distribution and administration, which means South Africa and many African countries are lagging behind international rollout, which means, you know, while Europeans may find it easier to travel between other countries, South Africans find it very difficult to access first world countries that had prior access to COVID-19 vaccines. But hackers apparently might prove another problem. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Andy, thanks for having us again. We've witnessed a 500% increase in fake certificates from March to May this year. Now that's globally, and in fact on our continent, it's certainly also on the large. And that's because, as we know, many people are not keen to take the vaccine, and certainly those that prefer also not to get tested are finding or trying to find loopholes and ways around, receiving fake certificates on the dark web. And unfortunately, that creates a challenge because you're providing your data, your personal data, to a hacker or a fraudster on the dark web.
What's the likelihood of a centralized system, and who would administer that? That would be a nightmare.
No, not really. In fact, you mentioned it earlier. So what we have is, or we've seen in Europe and the European Union and the UK, they kicked off something called a COVID passport scheme. So you receive a QR code that validates you as an individual that's been vaccinated or to some extent is COVID negative, and that's a central database. Over here on the continent, Ethiopian Airlines and Air Rwanda are associated with the International Air Transport Association, and they have something called a mobile travel pass. But that's more of a digital signature that's loaded on a database, and obviously you then verify yourself when you're traveling. And then last but not least, there is something also by the African Union Center for Disease Control, so a little bit of a long one there, and they piloting something called a Trusted Travel Pass. So certainly there are tools available, or there are some of these digital platforms. It's really what we decide as a country makes sense for us and how we affiliate to those.
Where are we as South Africa in terms of putting in place the necessary digital systems to protect its citizens from entry by people who, as you say, may not want to get vaccinated, who may have tested positive but want to seek entry anyway?
Yeah, and look, I traveled in May this year, and I traveled to Nairobi, and I needed to get a COVID test done. And I printed my one out, but I also had the app on my phone. So fortunately, when I got to the airport at the boarding gate, I was asked to provide both. And unfortunately, there was one individual amongst us that was not able to provide the digital version of it. And lo and behold, we have these irregular forms of inconsistencies. In some cases, you can have a printout, and in some cases, people want a digital signature. So unfortunately, we're a little bit, we're not at the level that we should be in terms of our, peers or counterparts in Europe or in other parts of Africa. But absolutely, we have the platforms, we have the capabilities in our country, we have the digital technology. It's a matter of government and private sector coming together and, putting something in place.